Hi, everybody. You are very welcome to another Saturday session with ExamRevision.ie. It's Daniel here back with you for a session today on Leaving Cert English Higher Level Paper 1, and we are going to be looking specifically at the compositions and the most popular compositions that come up. At any stage, again, if you have questions, you know by now you can throw us a DM over on our Instagram page, Twitter, etc. If you have got anything that we can help with, just fire us off a message. Okay, so we are going to start today then by looking first at the adjustments to the 2022 exam paper, because again, that's primarily why we are doing a session on the composition, because as I'm sure you know, as I'm sure your teachers have told you, with the adjustments because of the pandemic and that, there are implications for the marking scheme, and there are implications for how that is weighted. We're then going to get straight into short story writing, what makes a good short story, how do you write a short story, all those kind of questions. Then we're going to look at speech writing, and we'll finish up today's Saturday session by looking at personal essays. Okay, so first of all, and again, we've put this up a couple of times on Twitter and across our socials, but just to remind you, this with the modifications that have been made to the paper, so the same as last year's Leaving Certs. What does it mean then? It means the percentage breakdowns has changed. So your question A or your question B is going to be worth 14%. Your single text is 25, comparative 25, poetry, the two parts prescribed and unseen, is 25. You know by now as well, hopefully, that you only have to do 2 sections on paper 2 rather than the full 3. And then on paper 1, which we're talking about today, it's the A or the B with your composing section. So your composing section is the kind of the banker section. But again, because of that kind of reallocation of marks, the redistribution, it now means that you're composing in of itself, that 100-mark composing title, it's actually worth 36% of your overall grade in Leaving Cert English. So again, if you can get a really good mark in this, in the composing section, then look how close you are to actually passing the paper before you even do anything else. So it is more so this year than previous years. It is honestly worth your time and effort sitting down, looking at your composing, how to actually approach it properly, because you have the luxury of time this year as well. So again, as we always do with everything that we do, we start as our baseline with the Leaving Cert English marking scheme. Okay, so PCLM, purpose, coherence, language mechanics. It's what the examiner will use when they are assessing your work, so you have to have an understanding of that. So purpose, worth 30%, coherence 30, L for language 30, and then mechanics is 10. If you have a waiver, you don't have to worry about mechanics. That is disregarded for you. Now, purpose, are you sticking to the question being asked of you? And the red asterisk, the little star that I have there beside the 30%, it's there because whatever you get in purpose, there would be a ceiling put on your mark. Do you know what I mean? So let's say, for example, you get 21 in your composing. Okay, you get 21 out of 30 for your P mark in your composing. And that means your C and L mark, then you can only get a maximum of 21 or below in that. You know what I mean? So I can't give you, if I give you 21 for purpose, I cannot give you 22 for coherence or 23 for language. So that's why the purpose is important. So your teachers have said it to you probably since first year at this stage, but stick to the question you're being asked. If you're being asked to write a short story that explores the developing relationship between two characters, one is young and one is old, don't write an essay then about two best friends who are, I don't know, going on holiday or something. You have to stick to the question. You have to stick to the requirements of the question. That's the first thing that the examiner is going to be looking for. Has this candidate answered what that has been asked of them? Your coherence then, so your coherence is your, how clear are you? How easily is it to read your piece of work? So if I read your piece of work, am I able to clearly be able to identify what is being said in it, what's happening in it? So the structure, the sequencing of your ideas, the structure on the page, everything like that. Language, then your use of language, your ability to control language, your use of vocabulary, your expression, etc. And then mechanics, spelling, grammar, punctuation, structure, and stuff like that. Okay. So let's go straight into it then. Composing. So we're going to go with the short stories for 100 marks. Now, first of all, the thing with the short story, people are, I won't say afraid of short stories, but people are kind of reluctant to go near short stories. And that's understandable. It is probably one of the more challenging topics on the Leaving Cert English syllabus because, again, there's a degree of having a flair for short stories. There's a degree of having that kind of, I won't say talent, but that ability to create narrative on the page. It's not something that comes naturally to everybody, and that's fine. All I would say to you though is don't, if you haven't done short stories or you're not comfortable with short stories, or if you've done short stories and you haven't gotten a particularly good mark in them, then again, that's fine. It's an exam scenario, so play to your strengths. What am I saying to you? I'm saying don't take up a new hobby this close to the exams. So if short stories aren't for you, hopefully you know by now what's for you and what's not. Stay away from them. Okay. But for those who would like to kind of delve into short stories, or those who just want some extra help to kind of polishing up, how do you get the H1? How do you get the H2 kind of territory? Stick around. Okay. So first of all, the short story, and again, a lot of this is stuff hopefully you will know. This session today, the Saturday session, it's more about, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel or teach you something from scratch. It's just giving you, again, I have examined, I have written, not written, I have marked for the State Exam Commission for higher level English for the last couple of years. So it's kind of just what works and what doesn't, what pays off when candidates do it well and what to avoid. Okay, so that's all we're trying to do today, is give you a couple of tips and pointers. So the short story, this question primarily requires you to write in the genre of narration. Okay, so think back to the early days of fifth year English. You probably would have done the 5 language genres. Okay, persuasion, narration, aesthetic, information, and argument. Okay, the 5 genres. Narration, it's storytelling, storytelling in all its forms. So there will be at least one short story option on the paper that I am certain of. Okay, I'm 100% certain that you will have the option of at least one short story on your paper in June. Okay, it'll be the 8th of June this year, won't it? Wednesday, the 8th of June. So your short story will be specific to what is being asked of you, but certain conventions are always expected. So remember, paper 1, that paper, that's the language paper. So the certain conventions. So the basic things that you all need to be doing, you need to have a setting, you need to have characters, you need to have a plot, and you need to have that narrative writing. So if you can't remember anything else from today, remember that. SCPN, okay? An acronym for remembering it is spicy chicken pot noodle, which again, it sounds disgusting, but we're just using the acronym to remind you of the 4 kind of conventions of that everyone is expected. If you go near a short story, if you don't, you're not going to get away by not mentioning these, okay? So the setting, the characters, the plot, and narrative writing, SCPN. So first of all, we have setting then. So setting may be specifically given to you in the question. All right. Very simply put, setting, as I'm sure you know, it's the time and place in which your story takes place. So is it, I don't know, 1920s New York? Is it 1940s Berlin? Is it modern day Dublin? Wherever it might be, okay? But the setting is the time and the place and the context in which your story is taking place, okay? So be conscious of setting. Develop and convey, like I say here, a very clear sense of time and place. All right, it will give your story that sense of depth and help you when you're writing. And one of the things here is use what you know, use what is familiar to you. So avoid, if you can, overly complicated and unnecessary settings. So again, if you can avoid it, which hopefully you will be able to, depending on the question, but avoid things like um, fantasy. Avoid things like make-believe worlds. Avoid everything like that, because it's, to be honest with you, it doesn't translate well, and you don't know um what type of examiner you're going to get. So avoid, play it safe where possible for this. So don't put it in a fantasy world, or like a make-believe kind of whatever. Avoid it if you can. Okay. Now, so characters then. So the characters are the lifeblood of your story. Okay. So there needs to be people actually in your story, first of all. All right. So again, you know yourself, we watch Netflix shows, TV shows, Disney Plus, whatever it might be. We go to the cinema. Like, characters, people drive the story. Okay. People and what they do are the lifeblood. They are the focal point of the story. So you need to develop a sense of who your characters are. So what do they do? What do they look like? Okay, what's their background? Okay, so flesh out that character, make them a whole kind of being. Do you know what I mean? So give them some sort of depth to them. And again, this necessarily isn't all going to make it onto the page, but what I'm saying is for yourself and your own thought process, and particularly when you have the luxury this year. Okay, particularly this year when you have the luxury of time on your side. And I will talk about kind of page length and how long to spend on the composings of the compositions at the end of today's session. But yeah, so don't be afraid to kind of flesh out your characters. um but look here, so classic storytelling, the main character then must experience an event, or they must experience a challenge or a complication or a revelation of some kind. um But again, it doesn't have to be OTT. It doesn't have to be over the top. It doesn't have to be kind of corny or cheesy. It can be something that fits in nicely with the story. And we'll talk about that in more detail when I look at plot in a couple of minutes, okay? As well, obviously, keep your character count small. So avoid over description. So subtle suggestion is always better. Okay, so what I'm saying by that is you don't need to, it's quite juvenile, it's quite kind of first year English. Okay, you don't need to go into every single minute detail of your character. Suggest something. And again, that's something I'll talk about when we talk about narrative writing in a couple of minutes. So, plot then. Okay, so that's the story itself. You need to have a plot. Okay. Um, so there's different ways of saying this. So it's the rule of three, it's the linear plot, whatever it might be. But the story itself, so the rule, keep it simple. Okay, really now keep it simple. It is a short story that you are writing in an exam situation. So they're not expecting you to be like a mini Sebastian Barry or Colin Tobin or Charlotte Perkins. They are not looking for that. They're looking for just an attempt at narrative, okay, with some rich examples and some moments of goodness, moments of good stuff in it. So keep it simple. So what does that mean? The rule of three. Think back to when you were a small child, the tale of the three little pigs, Cinderella, whatever it might be. All of those stories, they still had the rule of three. So you have your clear intro. Okay. Your clear intro, it sets things up for you. The opening of your story to establish the narrative direction. So set the story. Do you know what I mean? Introduce your character. Introduce what's going to happen. Give a sense of atmosphere. Give us some context. Okay. Don't, again, though, don't overdo it. Don't overcomplicate it. So, for example, keep your character count short as well. It's absolutely fine to have only one or two characters in your story. It's absolutely fine not to give the character a name. Okay. Okay, so sorry about that, just a slight technical glitch. So we're going to get back to it. Yeah, so your clear intro, you do all the setting up, then you need to move your story on. So think of it like a car. Your car needs to move. You get in behind the wheel of your car, A, B, C. So you need to move the story on. So you don't bog yourself down in extraneous detail. Okay, so move your story on. So simple way of putting that, your plot is event driven. Something needs to happen. So event driven elements in the middle, something needs to happen to move the story along, and then your ending. So whatever form it may take, there needs to be a clear stop and a clear ending. So go with the rule of three and a logical, and again, probably if you have a A4 pad or anything in front of you, scribble that down. There needs to be that logical sequence of events that would be easy for the reader to follow. Okay. Just some tips then, guys, on when you're concerning yourself with plot and you're writing narratives and short stories. Again, avoid things like here at the ending of your story saying, and then I woke up and it was all a dream. No, doesn't work, won't translate well. The examiner won't like it. Don't say something like that. Try avoid things like flashbacks and flash forwards. Don't do that. Having an ulterior ending, try to stay away from stuff like that as well, because like I said, it doesn't really come across well. And avoid, if you can, avoid things like plot twists or all of a sudden something just, I don't know, a zombie apocalypse happens all of us, because again, it's tiresome and it's laborious to read. It doesn't actually do what you might think it does. It doesn't achieve what you think it might achieve. Okay, so now then, the narrative writing, and again, this is the bit now that I think I can really help people with for this morning's session. Your ability to write narrative is something that, again, people live and die on their ability on how to write narrative and how well they're able to craft a narrative or to tell the story. So the short story is an invitation to write creatively. First of all, we know that. Hopefully you are being tested on your ability to write in the genre of narration, so the telling of a story. So start with a narrative point of view. So how are you going to tell the story? So is it going to be first person narration? Is it going to be second person? Is it going to be third person narration? So I walked across the road. He walked across the road. Or Daniel walked across the road. Whatever one it is, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. But the important thing, the golden rule here, once you've picked your narrative point of view, stick with it. So don't start with I walked across the road and then halfway through say Daniel walked across the road, because that will confuse the examiner. Your C mark will be impacted on that, your coherence mark. For narrative then as well, zone in on details that will be familiar to both you and the reader. Okay, so again, use the world around you. And I don't mean use kind of the world through rose tinted glasses. I mean like use the world in all of its beauty and all of its ugliness. Everyday, simple familiarity. The examiner is a real person. Believe it or not, you're a real person. You have gone to things like, I don't know, supermarkets. The examiner has gone to supermarkets. Set it somewhere ordinary. Describe the ordinary, familiar, everyday details. It's really effective if done well. Okay. Simple and descriptive details, again, like I said, can be very effective. Start small and open out. And I'll show you what I mean by that now in a minute. Okay. So exam focus, show, don't tell. Okay, show, don't tell. So the kind of the gray writing there, the darker writing on the top, that is me telling you. Okay, that's not narrative. That's simply me telling you something. I'm rattling off something. Whereas the blue bold writing, that's me writing in narrative form. That's me showing you something. I'm not just telling you something. So it's the same thing, but just better and improved. Okay, so Jane was from New York and she was sad because her boyfriend broke up with her. They were engaged to be married, but not now. She is very upset. Great. You revealed everything in 2 sentences. That's the end of your story. So where can you go? So avoid that, because to be honest, it's not very good. Whereas the second one, okay, it was late. So I'm setting something up. Jane sat on the edge of the steps of the Empire State Building. Its giant shadow made her feel even more cold and alone, if that was possible. Rain started to pour from the sky. She gripped the thin edges of her engagement ring. tears falling from her already swollen eyes. So I haven't used the words sad. I haven't used the words New York, but yet you fully get where we are. We get the emotional state of the character. We're using things there like pathetic fallacy. So you may remember that from studying Shakespeare. Okay, it's when in a narrative, weather and the natural world is used to convey human emotion or to convey an emotional state. So for example, thunder is associated with anger, rain is associated with distressed and upset, etc. Okay, so keep going. So again, the first one and the second one. The first one, I'm telling you something. The second one, I'm showing you something in a narrative format, okay? A young girl is leaving behind an old life. It's raining and she is in a car with her mother. They had to leave for many reasons. They have very little money and are not sure where they are going. Okay, that's the context. Not really telling you much though, so let's tease it out. 2 wrinkled Aldi shopping bags have the last 16 years of my life hurriedly packed into them. They were now thrown on the back seat of my mother's car, along with 2 packets of digestive biscuits and 3 bottles of still water. As the car dipped its way through heavy rain, it began to gently shake from side to side, a mixture of the bad weather and the fact he would never really let my mother drive. I turn to the back to grab the biscuits again, and my mother snaps them from my hand. I flinch, a natural reaction given what we are running away from. She tells me to go easy on the biscuits. They're to last us for God knows how long. Nothing really seems clear to me. All I know is that we're here, the 2 of us. I don't know where we're going or when we'll even get there. All I know is we're here, still alive, still breathing. Okay, so again, like what I said a few minutes ago, use the familiar world around you. So you have the Aldi shopping bags, you have the still bottles of water, the blue bottle of water, you have the red round packet of digestive biscuits. You know, use the world around you. Suggest things. You don't have to say things outright. Okay, leave it up to the imagination of the reader themselves. So again, he would never let my mother drive. We don't know who he is. All right, but we've given him a capital H, so subtle things like that can be worked really well into a narrative, okay? Good stuff. So, okay, so a young woman who has had a difficult relationship with her parents decides to leave the family home for the last time. She has just finished packing up the last of her things from her old bedroom. Thank God they were out, she thought. She's had enough of shouting, trying to be heard. She traces her fingers along the bed frame of a bed that she has slept in for as long as she can remember. Looking around, she can see different markers of her own growing up, whether it's the faint black sticky residue of Princess Ariel or the sun-faded Harry Styles poster. It's as it stands like an altar to her growing up. She sits on the bare mattress, bags packed and coat zipped. Without wanting to, she can feel a cry crawl up from inside her chest. She thinks it's hard to go, but even harder to stay. Closing the door, a faint dust cloud can be seen through the gap in the blind. So again, use the real world. So the sticky black residue of the stickers from Princess Ariel, the sun-faded Harry Styles poster, the gap in the blind. You can imagine this, okay? We're relying here on descriptive detail. We're painting a picture. We're giving that suggestion of a really kind of rich atmosphere. We're creating a tone. We're creating a keyword narrative, a story, okay? Okie dokie. So we are going to move on now, if that's okay, to the personal essay. So straight into it, the personal essay, you will get a question and have to personally reflect on it in your response. Again, like with the short story, guys, I am 100% certain that you are going to get the option of a personal essay on your exam paper on the 8th of June. Okay, I promise personal essays will be there. So like we say here, you will get a question and have to personally reflect on it in your response. There are different ways to approach this type of question, okay? But whatever you do, you must ensure that it is taken from a personal point of view. Okay, so you were explaining and you were describing something from your own memory. You're going into detail about how it impacted, how it formed, how it influenced, how it shaped you, etc. So you're letting the reader in to your personal world. You're opening the door to your personal world, and you're letting the reader step in and get a hint or a flavor or an experience of what you, the person behind the page, is really like. Okay. So the correct approach then for the style and tone of a personal essay. So first of all, it's not a story. You'd be surprised how many candidates, how many students year after year continue to kind of half write a story and half write sort of a bit of a diary entry and half write again a bit of a story. You're not being asked to do that. Okay. You're not describing a narrative. So again, the first bullet point here, do not go into the style of narrative. Okay. Your anecdotes are fine, but do not go into the style of narrative. You are not telling a story here, guys. Okay, you are not telling a story here. A simple way of putting it, you're not telling a story. You yourself are the story. Okay, so you don't need to go into narrative or anything like that. So the style and tone then should be more informal. So give the reader, give the examiner a sense of personality. Let your own sense of self, let your own sense of personality shine through or come through the page. Okay. So be genuine then. Be genuine and passionate in the way you come across to readers. Okay. In being authentic. So be descriptive, convey a sense of feeling and a sense of atmosphere that is intimate. It's almost confessional. Okay, so it's kind of like you're beckoning the examiner in, like, come here to me and I'll tell you something about myself. Come here, I'll let you into my world. Sit down and take a seat. I'll tell you about me. Okay, so it needs to have that kind of confessional style. So there should be a real demonstration of reflection, and that real demonstration of reflection and growth from the essay. So what is it that you learn? How have you grown, or how have you developed based on those experiences then that you write about? What's being gained? Okay, how have you grown up? Stuff like that. Okay. To be fair as well, in many ways, you're calling on a lot of the conventions and stylistic features that you kind of would have been doing with diary entries. So treat it kind of similar kind of tone, similar kind of approach. So what I have here are some recent examples from exam papers in the last 1 to 2 to 3 years, okay? So recent examples of personal essays then. Write a personal essay in which you reflect on what you are most proud of in your life, okay? Write a personal essay in which you celebrate friendship and reflect on how you have been influenced by the unique and diverse personalities of your friends. Write a personal essay in which you reflect on what feeds your imagination. Write a personal essay in which you reflect on the significant places that have helped define you as a person. Okay, so look, I'm not saying they're easy, but they're the same kind of general tone year in, year out. Okay, so something like places, imagination, hobbies, friends, family, stuff like that. Okay, those kind of deeper, kind of softer, more intimate things. So I have here an intro. I think this is taken from, I think, the 2020 examination paper, okay? And the title here is Write a personal essay in which you celebrate friendship and reflect on how you have been influenced by the unique and the diverse personalities of your friends. So again, this is just a sample, okay? And it gives you an idea. This is the type of thing they're looking for. I'm not one to believe in corny sayings, but the one that I think I've always been able to understand is your friends are like a family you can choose. That's true. I've always been attracted to weirdos and oddballs. My friends are like that. My friends are the most wonderful and the most wonderfully weird and odd family you could ever hope to have. They may not be the smartest or the most popular, but really that stuff doesn't matter to me. They are my friends. They guide me, empower me, celebrate me, and love me. They are unique, and to me, they are perfect. So again, we have here the kind of tongue in cheek, okay, the oddballs, the weirdos, but you're saying it in a respectful way. You're not being disrespectful. You're just being a bit tongue in cheek. You're just kind of having a bit of, I won't say crack, but with the examiner, but you're giving a sense of there's a human behind the page here. You're not in the kind of formal academic tone here. Okay, you can afford to be a little bit flexible here. To be honest, they're expecting you to be a little bit more informal and a little bit more friendly and warm if you're going with a personal essay. Okay. Okie dokie then. So speeches like that, again, there will absolutely, I can promise you, there will be a speech on your paper. There's two different types of speeches though, and that's what we're going to go through now. If you're not sure what to do on the composing as well, in my opinion, again, it's just my opinion. I know for a fact there are teachers that will disagree with me, but in my opinion, the speech is one of the easier composing questions for a student, for a candidate to manage. Okay, because again, we've all watched speeches, we all hear speeches, we've all read speeches. It's probably something we've been doing in some form since first year, maybe even since primary school. Okay, so when in doubt, you could cobble a speech together, but again, we're not looking to cobble something together. We're looking to get that really good mark in it. So let's have a look. So the speech then is a requirement on you to engage then with the genres of persuasion and or argument. So again, depending on the specific type of speech you will get. So you might get a debate style speech or you might get an address style speech. That will depend. Okay, so rule of thumb there. And again, I'm going to give you better ways to start it. But again, if it's a debate style speech, you will be starting with, ladies and gentlemen, chairperson and adjudicators, I am here today to speak against the motion. Okay, that would be your debate style. Whereas if it's an address style, you'd be saying, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming here today. My name is, okay. But again, that's kind of old fashioned. They're kind of static. I'm going to give you better ways to start it, okay? But anyway, that aside for a second, your main aim, right? Let's keep it nice and simple. Your main aim here with the speech is to clearly and to powerfully communicate a point of view, either chosen by you or asked of you. Okay, so what does that mean in simple terms for us then? So like we say here, know the type. So I've said this, an address style speech or a debate style speech. So the more classic debate style speech, where you dismantle an opposing viewpoint to your own, will take on a very clear, argumentative and passionate approach. It is more in the form of you delivering a talk that you can take a more relaxed approach then, okay? So the first one is more formal. The second one, you can let a bit of your own self come through. So you're blending their different elements of language together. So you have persuasion, you have information, etc. Either way, and again, you could probably say this for the entire English course, it's about effective communication. Okay, it really, really is. It's about that effective communication. So connect here with your audience. Remember, this is meant to be a piece of work that is to be spoken. So it's oral. Okay, it's to be spoken. It's to be heard. So it's not meant to be written or to be read like an essay. So have an awareness then and appreciation of audience. That idea of register. Okay, the tone and the style in which you deliver the speech will prove an understanding of audience or not. Okay, so show that awareness of register straight away. Again here, grab their attention as soon as you can. So be both powerful and sophisticated in the way in which you approach the speech. Okay, so again, be sincere and be genuine rather than being artificial and robotic. So an easy way to remember this, imagine you're actually going to speak this, or to talk this speech aloud. It should read like it's being read aloud, okay? So again, I see here in the slide, I've written down the word sophisticated. So for example, that doesn't mean using really posh words that you don't understand or get tongue-tied with. So for example, instead of saying, hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name is, and I'm going to speak, blah, 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 start with a quote or start with a statistic. Start with something that's going to command the attention of the audience. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, ladies and gentlemen, today, we know where that's going. We're familiar with that. Okay, so don't be afraid to disarm the audience by starting slightly differently. It will also, you'll have a positive effect on your examiner as well, because the examiner, if it's done well enough and effectively, if it's communicated effectively, the examiner will feel that kind of tonal shift as well, away from the more kind of predictable approach, I suppose. So convince your audience, okay? So be logical and ensure then that each of your points is made in a way that it's clearly defined and it clearly demonstrates that informed point of view throughout. Okay, so be logical. Don't start waffling. Don't start going off the point. Don't start bringing in tangents. You need to stick to the point. You need to be convincing. Okay, this person knows what they're talking about. Showing also ensure to use all the regular conventions then of speech and of the genre. So use of, for example, the I and the we pronoun. So I know that we don't want a system in Ireland where our children cannot go to school. Okay. Or I know, or we know, we've been through this before, whatever it might be. Rhetorical questions then. I don't want a future. I don't want a future where we continue to burn fossil fuels. Do you? That's a rhetorical question. It doesn't require an answer. Facts, figures, statistics. Again, you can make those up as well. The examiner is not going to be. It's for the purpose of an exam. They're not going to be fact checking your speech, so you can make the statistics up. So 25% of people who took part in the survey have said that, or from a research project conducted by Professor such and such from University X, it found that 1 in 3 individuals, whatever it might be, okay? Statistics, anecdotes again, personal short stories to illustrate a point, quotes, this idea then of short, snappy, soundbite sentences. Okay, so have a nice collection, have that pacing, have that movement in your speech. So have a nice collection of kind of shorter sentences and longer sentences. So the blending of the two. Have things like sound bites, or another way is have an earworm. So keep saying the same thing. Don't be afraid to use rhetoric. So for example, make America great again. Yes, we can. Stronger together. Okay. Strong, stable government. Flatten the curve, whatever it might be. But these are just, they're phrases that stick in your mind. Don't be afraid to put them in. Okay. Actually, not even don't be afraid. I would encourage you to put them in. Okie dokie then. So we're nearly coming to the end of today's Saturday session, but just a very simple, nice, easy thing to remember then, because again, you kind of think, oh, how am I going to remember all of those different things for a speech? Again, I have another handy acronym for you here, a forest. A forest. So alliteration. Okay. Strong, stable, steady. That's alliteration. Facts. Okay. So actual facts. It is a fact that we are using more electricity, that is more electricity, and we are burning more fossil fuels, that is causing the hole in the ozone layer to get bigger. That's a fact. Opinions then. Obviously, bring your own opinion. I believe that, I think that, I passionately think that. Rhetorical questions and repetition, we've already spoken about. Emotive language. Now, yeah, look, it's a speech. That idea, remember I said be convincing. So use superlatives. Don't say something is good. Say something is fantastic. Say something is amazing. Or don't say something is bad. Say something is deplorable. Okay? Or is devastating or disgusting or whatever it might be. Statistics we've spoken about already. And the rule of 3. So the rule of 3, someone like Joe Biden, for example, he's a very big supporter of the rule of 3. If you ever look at any of his speeches, the rule of 3 would be, let's say, I believe in a fair economy. How could you improve that sentence? Okay, so for example, the rule of 3 would be, I believe in a fair economy. I believe in a country. I believe in a society. I believe in a future where our children can grow up happy, healthy. and secure. Happy, healthy, secure, rather than I believe our children should be happy. Okay, so happy, comma, healthy, comma, secure. The rule of three can work really, really well for speech. Okay. And again, another just for the basic structure, then the basic approach, state what you're talking about, state your point of view, explain why you think it's right or important. So again, you have to convey a sense and of this person, they believe in their topic. They're invested in their topic. They care about their topic. Give evidence or data to support it, and then conclude by reinforcing your point. The ending is where you bring it home in the speech. The ending is like you need to have a strong finish for the speech in particular. Okay, bring it home. Clearly say, reinstate what you've said. Don't introduce anything new. Definitely don't change your point of view at that stage. Really hammer it home. Okay. Okay, so look, I just want to, oh, yes, actually, yeah. So we're looking at how many pages, how long are we spending on it? So I would spend, let's say, you could have a bit more, a bit less, but you have the time this year. You only need to do on paper one, a question A or a question B, and then your composition. So I would spend 90 odd minutes, if not more, on your, excuse me, I sneezed. 90 minutes on your composition, if not more, if not a little bit less. But yeah, give yourself that an hour and a half, ballpark figure, hour and a half. Really take your time, put work into it. You're looking at, it's a 100-mark question and you've 90 minutes. You're going to be looking, to be honest, guys, at I would say 5 pages, 5 or 6 pages. Definitely. I'm so sorry. I sneezed again. It's hay fever, it's coming in. But yeah, definitely no less than 4 pages. If you're writing less than 4, it's going to be impacted on your mark. So aim for the 6, aim 5 or 6. Don't be writing more than 6 though. If you start going into 7, 8 pages, it's waffling. You need to cut it back, bring it home. Okay, so again, look, thank you so much for joining today's Saturday session. We have more coming up next week. Again, keep an eye on our socials to find out more. If you do want to avail of our full content, we have the entire course, revision booklets, videos, sample answers, etc. ExamRevision.ie. There is a discount code there, as you can see in the white letters there, Daniel 20. If you use that, I think by Sunday you'll get 20% off. So yeah, again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure I'll see you again, and the very best of luck in all of your exams, but particularly English. Thank you.